I want to say, for both of us is, we're huge fans. We've been fans of you guys, since '85, and we're in Pittsburgh, so we're close to the Baltimore scene. So I wish I would have had an opportunity to get down there, in the early days, to see you guys.
Uh-huh.
And what was it like, Brian? When the band started. I mean, you guys, started in '77, which I looked it up. I was like, '77, man, that's cool. That the band's been around that long. It's awesome.
Yeah, well, that was like the very beginning. That was before Steve or Jimmy.
Right.
It was just me, Ronnie, and Donnie, and it was actually Ronnie and Donnie tried to get the thing going first, and they were looking for another guitar player, and I ran into Ronnie like late one night at a 7-Eleven, and it just so happened that he was leaving his band, the band that he was playing with, and I was auditioning for that band to take his place. And then I run into him at the 7-Eleven, and he talked me out of it. He goes, he's like, "Oh, you don't want to play with those guys. They never practice, and they play the same songs like year after year." And and I was looking at it like, well, there's an established band I could just jump in and already have gigs.
Right.
But Ronnie said, he says, "You should check out this thing that Donnie and I are doing." And he goes, "Donnie wants to write original music and get a record deal." And it was weird because I never thought about it like that. I just thought about jumping into a cover band and playing gigs. I never thought about writing songs and getting a record deal. So I actually had to think about it, but the next day they had the drummer that was playing with them call me, and he was a good salesman because he talked me into it. But that's when it started. I mean, that was, December '77, and they all showed up at my house like a week later, or maybe even a couple days later, and we set up down in the basement and ran through some stuff, and before I knew it, I was in the band.
That is cool. That's cool. That's great to hear. How the band got started. And we were just talking, a few minutes ago before we got on the call was how great it is to see a band, that wasn't on like a like a huge scene like the the LA Strip and the scene back then. You guys, came up in a I don't know how big Hagerstown is, but it's kind of like a small town in Maryland, and you've been successful all the way through, and you guys have never sold out either. You've stuck to your guns and played the music, right from the start, and that's really cool as a fan, coming from a fan's point of view.
Yeah, well, it's funny because Baltimore had kind of a music scene going on, but it was a lot of cover bands back then. There weren't that many original bands. And this was like before this whole Sunset Strip thing too, even,
Right.
But we looked up. There was a band that we used to do gigs with around Baltimore called Face Dancer, and they had a record deal with Capitol, and it was really the first band that we knew personally that had a record deal like that. And so we kind of, we looked up to them, and we sort of followed in their footsteps, and we even ended up hiring their manager, and that's how we ended up getting a record deal. And so, we didn't know how to do it, so we just kind of looked to whoever had one and checked out how they got it,
Right. That's cool. I mean, young guys coming up and not knowing, what's going on, and that's the way to do it. You guys obviously did something right, huh?
Well, yeah, that and relentlessly playing, doing gigs and playing. I mean, Baltimore back then was really happening as far as like the club scene. There was, you could play nonstop in Baltimore, for a month and not repeat a club,
Yeah, that's cool.
And we played other places besides Baltimore, but, there's just a lot of rock clubs at that point.
Right. And what's cool is seeing you guys live too. I mean, remembering what it was like, in the '80s, for us seeing you, and you guys have always been a great live act. It's always been, professional. It's been, a nice strong presence on stage too, and it's always a good time to see you live too.
Yeah, that was one of our things, and we played so much, it got us super tight. But we back in the early days, we kind of modeled ourselves after like the Ramones, because they were one of those bands that were they had this look on stage, but they had this sound, and they were self-contained. And I didn't even realize it until I looked back at it. Like I just I read a book on the Ramones, and the way that they did it was that they when they first started out, they go play these clubs, and they'd show up, and there'd be like a really crappy PA system or like a couple lights, and it just looked horrible. So they invested in a sound system and a light system, and we did the exact same thing. So we carried our sound and we carried our lights. So if we did show up at a club and the sound system was missing something, we could just go out in the truck and just pull ours in there, And so it always sounded the same and always looked the same. And we always carried a sound man and a light man, always, from the beginning.
See, that's cool, and that's that's a professional attitude right from the start too. And there's a lot of bands that just go out and just play for whatever. But you guys, took pride in what you do, and you still do.
Yeah, and Donnie was good at cracking the whip too. I mean, we used to rehearse relentlessly, but it paid off,
Right. I mean, it definitely did. And I actually I got a couple stories. Now that we're talking to you, we were just talking about bringing up is I remember the first time that we got to see you guys live. It wasn't even like a planned event. Kiss was on the Asylum tour in '85, and King Cobra was supposed to open the show, and Kiss, I guess, blew out the PA system, and then they brought you guys in. I think it was a couple days later or a week later, and I was like, man, these guys are. This is a great band. I mean, just having a chance to see you like that, so that really cemented it right there.
Yeah, I remember that show. Yep. In fact, we were in Houston, and we got the call, and we had like a day to get there.
Oh, man.
So we drove like nonstop from Houston to Pittsburgh, and I remember getting there the day of the show, like 9:30 a.m., and we all like try to take a quick nap,
right,
and then go to sound check. But yeah, that was a really cool show. I remember that. Yep.
I could when I look back at it too. I was thinking about it today. I could still see you guys on stage at that show because we sat like into the right side of the stage, and I remember you guys had all the amps behind you and everything, and it was just a good straight rock and roll show. I mean, it was. Hey, you guys made a statement there, and that's that was cool. That was really cool.
Yeah.
How about we're talking about when the albums came out, they kind of got you into the the commercial scene like Midnight Dynamite, which I think is still, I mean, that's still like a classic for me in my collection. I listen to it regularly, and that album right there was was kind of like when you guys to me came into like you said, came into the limelight. And I think about Scarlet Fever and the title track and everything. That's some great music, man.
Yeah, that kind of the first two records, I think we were still trying to sort of find our spot, and that third one, everything started to fall into place at that point, especially as far as the music goes.
Right. What about
and I think like the first record, that was way back in '81, and I think Atlantic didn't know what to do with that. They just sort of let us record it, and they threw it out there to see what would happen,
right.
And that was about it. There were no videos involved, no nothing, and then the second record, Atlantic tried to sort of push us into the pop kind of sound,
Right.
and that didn't work, and they didn't really help us. I mean, we had a couple of videos, but they didn't really help us promote the record. So I think the third one, and I think each record, it sold a little bit more each time. So by the third one, I think they started to have a little more faith in us or something.
Right.
So I think that's why that one did a little bit better, you know.
And that was like in a time where you know, like you said, they were looking for the, you know, the pop side, like back in the early '80s, because that's what was really on the scene, and that's kind of like probably where they were trying to steer everything. And when Midnight Dynamite hit, you know, that was like when the videos were big, and you guys actually had a chance to you know, to be out there to the, you know, to the masses.
Yeah, and plus we were, I don't know, maybe slightly behind the curve, because like when Cool Kids was done, like we were doing rough mixes, or final mixes actually, and our A&R guy comes down. We recorded that one in Florida, and he came down to the studio, and Def Leppard's Pyromania had just come out, and he had a copy of it, and he had a cassette of it, and he sticks it in, and we're sitting there mixing Cool Kids, which is this pop record,
Right.
and then he sticks in Pyromania, and you know, we heard that, and it was like, oh man, we could have done that,
Right.
you know, because that was more along our lines, you know, but we had to like try to make it a little more poppy, and so we hear Pyromania, and I think that was the record that sort of pushed everything in that direction, and so by the time Midnight Dynamite came out, you know, we were on the same wavelength as that kind of thing, you know.
Right. And you guys had Beau Hill do the production on that, correct?
Yeah.
So that was you know, that was kind of like in a Rat, you know, at that time frame and everything. So that was perfect because you know, the sound was what you were looking for, I'm sure, huh?
Well, yeah, he had just done the Rat record, and that was like, I guess that record had just taken off when we got in the studio with him. So yeah, it was like that whole, you know, Rat was on Atlantic, and you know, Beau was, you know, he just did that record, and that record was doing well, so the record company was into that whole thing. So when Beau did our record, it really helped, you know, with the whole Atlantic relationship and all that stuff.
What was it like for you, you know, as far as writing and you know, song structure, like in the early days? I mean, on the first three, you know, albums.
Well, it was kind of like it progressed each record. Like the first record, there was more band participation. You know, Donnie would come in with just a really rough idea for a song, and then we'd all just bang it out at rehearsal.
Right.
And until something, you know, came out of it. And then, you know, each record, Donnie got better at the songwriting, so he would have more and more songs to present to the band. And for, like, say, every 10 songs that he would write, or for every one song idea that I would come up with, he'd have 10. And his were way better than mine. So we would end up working on his.
Right.
And that happened with all of us in the band. I mean, occasionally Steve would push a little harder to get his on there, so he ended up getting a few more on than like any of us did. But
Right.
it was hard to keep up with Donnie, and you know, the more songs he wrote, the better he got, and we were just so preoccupied working on his stuff, we never really got to develop our own stuff, you know.
Right. And yeah, once you get something that's you know, kind of like a system, you know, that's what you go with, huh?
Yeah, and he was a great songwriter, so you know, I'd rather work on a great song than one of my rinky-dink songs.
And how about you know, when you went into you know, after, you know, Midnight Dynamite and then you guys really, you know, blew up on the scene with you know, with Blow My Fuse, and that's where you know, my second story comes in is you know, Brian's on the phone as well, and when the Blow My Fuse album came out, you know, not only was it a great album, but the album cover's awesome as well. And I painted it on the back of his jean jacket, and he still has it hanging in his closet to this day.
Yeah, still on there. He
Which is cool.
It looks great.
Which is really cool. So you guys had support here, man, for a lot of years.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that album cover came about we met this artist guy, and I can't remember how we met him. We were out there doing the record, and we were staying at the Oakwood Apartments out here in near Universal City, and we used to, we get done recording and we go out like to the cat house or something, and then we end up back at the apartment with a bunch of people, and at one point that guy was there, and he was showing us his artwork, and he did one of the LA Guns covers too around that time.
Okay.
And we saw that and we thought, oh, that looks really cool. So he asked if he could maybe, put something together for us. So we said, sure, let's see what you can do. And he came up with that, and was like, it's just so, it just catches your eye. It's got such a cool vibe to it,
Right.
You can see it a mile away.
Absolutely.
Especially on a T-shirt,
Right. And that was cool. And that album right there is, that stands the test of time, definitely. I mean, that's and a lot of pretty much everything that you guys do is just something that you could just put the CD in or the album and play all the way through. There's no filler tracks. They're all good, good cuts, and it's just it's just great rock and roll music, and it's the way it should be.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I think another thing that worked in our favor too was, when we first signed our record deal way back, in '81, we were supposed to deliver a record a year, but we never did. We would just stretch it as far as we could until we had enough good stuff to do a good record, and it usually ended up being every other year.
Right.
Instead of just throwing everything out there as fast as we could, we definitely took our time and made sure we were ready to do it before we did it.
And that comes across, with the, like I said before, the quality and the professionalism is you guys, you really care about what you put out there, and it's, that's the reason that the the stuff that you put out in the early days, all the way up through now, just it stands the test of time.
Yeah, it does stand up pretty well. I mean, there are a few tracks that sound a little dated here and there, but most of them are. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I don't, normally put on one of our records, but occasionally I'll just grab one and take it in the car with me and stick it in just for, just because I hadn't heard it in a while, and yeah, they are the kind of records that you can just let it go and let it play the whole way through,
Agreed. And what was it like? I'll ask you this: what was it like, back in, those times, like in early to mid '80s, and especially the mid '80s when the scene was really blowing up, and you guys, with like Cold Blood, when that hit and everything. What was it like for you guys to to actually get a little more recognition, for the band?
Oh, it was cool. I mean, anytime you hear yourself on the radio, it's like, wow. But, the MTV thing, we struggled with that for a long time, trying to get them to play videos, and they would play them, but they'd be like 3 a.m. or,
Right.
especially back when we had like Body Talk and Cool Kids, they didn't want to play those things. So by the time we got to Cold Blood, and then all of a sudden, that thing, they had that request hour, and that got on there, and they ended up having to change the rules because of that song, because it was like the most requested song for the time limit. Like, they had a time limit on it, and it got to the end of the time limit, and it was still the most requested song. They people wouldn't let it go, so they had to extend the time limit on how long a song could be like the most requested song. So that was really good, and that was before Don't Close Your Eyes.
Right,
so,
right.
By the time that came along, it was just I mean, you never get tired of it. It's just such a cool feeling. And we had a little, we had a little bit a taste of that here and there along the way. But that record, those two songs, Cold Blood and Don't Close Your Eyes, were the ones that really just took off, and it was amazing to watch that happen.
And that album is I mean, it's monstrous too. I mean, even when you put it in, today, it sounds great. It sounds huge, and it has a a good live feel to it. At least to me, anyway.
Yeah, and that was a Tom Werman produced record.
Right.
I think he did a really great job on that.
That is. I mean, it's and is that what you guys were looking for? Is that what you think is I mean, in those days, was that the definitive kick sound? Is that what you really wanted out of it?
Yeah, I think so. And we did kind of go for we were always conscious of playing the songs live too. Like you said, it had a kind of a live sound, and we didn't go crazy with overdubs and stuff just because we wanted to be able to duplicate it live. So so it came across sounding just like we sound,
Right, it definitely does. It definitely does. And I remember seeing you guys on that tour too, and it was just as good. I believe it was. I think it was at the Duquesne Palumbo Center. Was that right, Brian? Was that where we saw them at that year?
Might have been at the mosque.
We saw them at the mosque, but we saw them at the Palumbo Center too. There was a bunch of bands that played it. I think it was like wasn't Brittany Fox,
right?
Great White.
Right. Yeah,
and that was that was another thing. I mean, you could see how much the band developed from seeing you on that Midnight Dynamite tour, and then when it really started to blow up, and blow my fuse, and that's again, you guys are one of the best live bands that I've heard, and really it's great. I mean, it's great to to see you still doing it and still sounding great live.
Yeah, when we got back together, it was just like climbing back on a bicycle, As soon as we hit the stage, it all came back.
Right.
and we had done it, we played so much back in the 80s that even the tightness came back, all that stuff. Right.
And you guys...
Are you still in contact with Donnie at all? Nah, last time I talked to him was probably 6 months before we reformed Kicks, and I hadn't talked to him since I left the band. It was like 10 years. I hadn't talked to him in 10 years, and I just happened to be going through my phone book and found his number, and I thought, I wonder if this still works, and I dialed it, and his girlfriend answered. So I talked to him for a little while, and we had a great conversation. We talked about old times, and it was really cool. And then, and then 6 months later, Steve calls me about getting the band back together, but they didn't want Donnie involved because there was some problems with Donnie back in the old days. I mean, he's kind of a control freak, and so they were saying, well, it'd be cool to do some shows, but I don't want to do it if Donnie's there. I just want to, have fun. And if Donnie was there, he'd make it wouldn't be fun anymore. It'd be like this,
right?
I don't know. He'd be cracking the whip and taking the fun out of it. But so anyway, so that's how that happened. And back when, like, I had left the band in '93, I came back and did that last record, Show Business, but I was basically out of the band by then. So, those guys tried to go another year or two. And when they finally broke up, Steve and Donnie had like a really kind of a nasty falling out at the end there. So that's one of the reasons Steve didn't want to do it with Donnie.
Right.
And so when we finally did put the band back together, there was some people, like mutual friends of Donnie's and ours, that would run into Donnie, and by that point, Donnie was like not. He was like he hated all of us by that point because we had done it without him, And I don't blame him for being mad, but
Right.
So yeah, so I don't think any of us are going to be talking to him anytime soon.
That happens too, because a band's like a family. I mean, to try to get along for that many years and try to have that many different personalities, especially in in an artistic, setting like that, to where everybody has a little bit of say so. I could see that happening. That's why it happens with a lot of bands.
Yeah.
How about when you did you guys went out of Blow My Fuse, and then Hot Wire hit, and I always when I got the Sirius radio on, I got Hair Nation on, and as soon as I hear Girl Money kicking in, the radio gets cranked. 'Cause that is a great tune. That's just one I don't think there's any other band that could do that song ever as good as you guys, did that song. It really is. It's I know as soon as I hear that kick in, that's Kicks.
Yeah, it does have our signature.
That is. That's a good tune, and another great album. I mean, coming up again and all the way from the start. You guys just you just had the knack of putting that together. Like I said, there's no killer tracks. And it's all. What's cool about Kicks too is it's good, fun music. It's not depressing. It's it just makes you want to get your fist in the air at a concert, no doubt.
Yeah, well, that was one of we had that in mind the whole time. That was our thing. It's just we didn't want to get political or any of that thing. We just wanted to keep it fun and for people to have a good time.
It comes across in the live chat too. Absolutely fun. You guys just look like you're having a great time up on stage with one another. It comes across live. Great shows.
That's true. And how about some of your side projects? We were talking about when you got into with Rhino Bucket, and what was it like working with those guys? I mean, with Rich Wright, because I'm a big White Sister fan. That's one of the bands that's kind of like I thought they were kind of like a sleeper band.
Yeah, I ran into them. Well, actually, when I moved out here to LA back in the early '90s, I was sort of jumping around to different things, trying to find people to play with, and one of the things I stumbled onto was this cool little blues band that was playing around, and it just so happened that Reeve, the bass player from Rhino Bucket, was the bass player, and so I became really good friends with Reeve, and then him and I would we were sort of like a team, so we joined these other bands together, like we joined this country rock band for a while, and then at some point George shows up and wanted to put something together, and that's when they got that guy Rich to play drums. So it was almost Rhino Bucket, but it wasn't called Rhino Bucket at the time. It was called Deep Six Holiday. But we worked on some songs and we did some shows, and then that's when I was going through my whole drug thing.
Right.
So I ended up getting arrested and going through rehab, and that caused that whole project to fall apart. And like a year and a half later, George calls me back and he says, he goes, well, Ricky Rackman was trying to revive the Cat House, and he wanted Rhino Bucket to play. So George says, hey, would you be interested in doing the gig? Because the original guy, Greg, didn't want to play.
Right.
So I thought, yeah, sure. And then at that point, that's when they got their original drummer back, Jackie, who used to be Liam in the old days.
Right.
But so Liam was now Jackie, which he had a sex change, so it was now a she.
Right.
So anyway, so that was actually, it was Rhino Bucket with me as the replacement guitar player, and it was funny because I just did it to sort of do those gigs with them, and then it just kept on going, and we started working on songs, and some of those songs from the Deep Six Holiday days came back around, and we reworked them up with Jackie playing drums, and yeah, before I knew it, it was like I was in the band, and we were recording a record and doing like soundtrack stuff, and it was really cool how that came around, and that really filled in a nice spot before the Kicks thing happened again.
That's cool that you.
But I was going to say, you mentioned Rich Wright. I only knew him for that short period of time, and I only did a few gigs with him, so I didn't really get to know him that well.
Yeah, when I saw that that you had played with those guys, and I thought that was pretty cool because it was like you were just talking about playing a little bit of blues, the blues band, and what are like some of your influences coming up? I know a lot of musicians, you like to hear different things because it helps you to to show different sides to your art.
Well, when I first started out playing, the blues that's what caught my ear to begin with, and I was into the Beatles and all that too growing up, but for some reason as far as guitar playing, especially when I was just starting out, they just seemed so over my head, and blues was just the simple groove music that I could grasp, and that and Chuck Berry, the old 50s rock and roll, and that's where I really learned to play guitar. And then getting a little older, I stumbled onto the whole Southern rock thing, the Allman Brothers and Leonard Skinner and all that stuff, and that's really guitar music there, and so that's really where I come from. It's like a blues Southern rock, and like ZZ Top. I love ZZ Top.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And so all that stuff, and then as the years progress, I discovered new things, and of course when AC/DC came around, they're just a high energy blues band,
Right.
And Angus is he's like Billy Gibbons on steroids.
Right.
So when I heard Angus, I was like, wow, this is like Billy Gibbons except even better. So it's just like that. It's just I find different people along the way that just influence me a little bit more, and then eventually, actually during the '80s, this is weird because in the '80s, it's all like the heavy metal and rock, and I started getting into country music.
Right.
Like when Dwight Yoakam came out and stuff, I kind of went that way, and so that even influences my playing. I'm really into the country players. There's some amazing guitar players that play country.
Absolutely. And they really don't like you just brought that up, and they really don't get any major recognition. I mean, there really is some great musicians. It's kind of like now it's really the rock music of the USA right now.
Yeah. Well, country it's kind of gotten commercial too. I mean, there's a lot of really bad country.
Right.
But there's still good stuff here and there that you can find. Like I like to listen to some of the older stuff, but like on XM, I'll listen to that. What's it, the Outlaw Country station?
Yep.
But they play a wider range. They'll play country, but they'll also have the Allman Brothers and Leonard Skinner and Graham Parsons and like everything on there.
That's all good stuff. Yeah, that's what we grew up on. And it was sad to see Greg Allman passing.
Yeah.
That guy was amazing. I mean, really, that whole band. And we never,
Yeah.
No, go ahead, bro.
I'm sorry. I keep talking when you're talking.
No.
I was going to say, yeah, the Allman Brothers, they were a huge influence on me back in the early days. I just couldn't get enough of them, especially, like the Eda Peach record and Brothers and Sisters, and I mean, Dickie Betts is another guy. He was a major influence on my style as far as guitar playing.
Yeah, I was just talking to my mom this morning, and we brought that up, that Eat a Peach album, because that was, that was my dad's favorite. And we were talking about, Greg passing, and just really how fast time flies. Just remember growing up with those guys, and hearing that and seeing how much, how many people they influenced too, and that's really cool.
Yeah, definitely.
And when you guys, after you got back together, after you did that, you guys got back together and you did the latest album, Rock Your Face Off, which I think is another excellent Kicks album. What was it like, doing a record, after a little while for you guys, that one, putting it out, and what was it like going into the studio and doing the recording for that one?
Well, that took a long time for us to get around to doing, because we initially started playing shows at the end of 2003, like around the holidays.
Right.
And, that record came out in 2014, so that's a long time.
Right.
I think we were just, I know I was kind of like, I was worried about it. I didn't know if we could do it without Donnie.
Right.
And we all had our own things. Like, in fact, to this day, I'm still in Rhino Bucket. But Steve back then, he had his band Funny Money, and Ronnie has his band The Blues Vultures. So everybody had their own little things they were doing. So we were all writing songs for those things.
Right.
So we didn't really think about the Kicks thing. We just kept playing the old songs, and people liked them, and we didn't see any reason to not do that. But then people started asking us about a new record, and I knew in the back of my mind, I thought, one of these days we're going to have to face that.
Right.
And when the cool thing is, our current bass player Mark Shanker, he's always getting these ideas for like merch, like the T-shirts, or he got the idea to do this live DVD at one point, and that's sort of what got us thinking about.
Hello.
I lost him. Here, let me get him back on. Hold on.
Yeah.
Hey, Brian.
You there?
You there?
Okay. I don't know what happened there.
I don't know.
That was weird.
The call just dropped. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
So I don't know where I was. I was talking about we put out that live DVD, and actually we put it together first. These guys came around to film it, and then Mark was saying, "Hey, we should put this out," and so we just sort of said, "Okay, go ahead if you have an idea." So Mark actually pursued that whole thing with that DVD, and he found Frontiers Records first. That it's an Italian label that's got a bunch of old '80s bands on there,
right,
on their label, and so he contacted them, and they're the ones that put that out, and we made the agreement, and for them to put that out, we had to agree to do a studio record at some point. So that was in the agreement. So that got us thinking about it. And then that record deal kind of fell apart because they messed up on the whole licensing thing with the DVD. So we got out of that contract, and but at that point we were already like working on songs, and it was funny because everybody was sort of throwing their ideas. We had a big pile of songs to choose from, from over the years of everybody having songs, and Mark and I got together and started weeding through all these songs, trying to figure out which ones would be the best Kick song, because there was a lot of different influences. Like Mark's he's a lot younger than us, so he's got a more of an '80s influence. more than what we have, because we're really a 70s band if you really look at it.
Right,
and,
right.
But Mark was more of an 80s guy, heavy metal influenced. So he had a lot of heavier stuff. And so we had to sort of look at songs, and we'd go, I'd look at one of his songs that he co-wrote with this other guy, this friend of his, and it would be this really heavy sounding thing, tuned down low. You know how bands are tuned down low.
Right.
And I'd hear it and I'd go, it's kind of a cool song, but it's really too heavy. It's not a kick song. And then I would think, well, what would happen if we tuned this up to play it in a different key? We'd play it in like the key of E, like a normal band.
Right.
and kind of lighten it up a little, and then all of a sudden that song would be like, oh, that sounds better. So we had to go through all the stuff and do that with it, and change parts, like take out like would have some weird transition that didn't sound right, so we'd take that out and we put a different part in there. And so we were just putting parts together, and then when we finally got Taylor Rhodes involved, like we were talking about getting somebody to produce it, and they were throwing around the idea of maybe Bo Hill.
Right.
But the thing was, Bo Hill didn't want to actually come there and work with us. He just wanted us to put it together, send it to him, and he was going to mix it. And it was like, I think we need more of a hands-on guy. So I actually I reached out to Taylor, and he was a little hesitant at first, but I started sending him songs. Like, we'd put together some demos, and I started sending Taylor some songs, and finally he started, maybe this will work. So he scheduled a week to come up to Virginia, to Mark's house, and we did a week of pre-production. Like, everybody came down to Mark's house, and we set up in this little room with little practice amps, right, and sat there with Taylor, and we went through this batch of songs, and we just shaped them into kick songs. And that was the main concern. We had to have it sound like kicks. We didn't want to come out sound like, a tuned down heavy band, like, we didn't want to sound modern.
Right.
So that was the goal. And I think, bringing Taylor in was the magic ingredient for that to happen. And, and it seemed to have turned out. And it's funny because, everybody was a little nervous about it all the way up until the end. And then when we finally got it done and we listened to it, it was like, wow, this is pretty good.
Right.
Like, right. We almost surprised ourselves with it.
That is, it's great. I mean, it fits in perfectly with the full catalog. I mean, it sounds just as good as all the other ones did, and you could tell, it's a good, strong Kicks album, definitely.
Yeah, and there again, we wanted to keep it in that same spirit of just a fun record. We didn't because there were a few songs in that pile that were that had some different overtones, some political stuff, and it was like, nah, we don't want to go that way,
Right.
So we tried to keep it in the tradition of just the fun record.
What's it like, talking about, releasing this and, the modern times now. What's it like for Kicks, as far as playing out live? And I know you guys just did M3, and you're always, you've been touring a lot, and it's good to see it. I mean, it's good to see that the band's still active and still out there, touring, and you guys are still killing it too, man.
Yeah, it's surprising that we're still going, because when we first got back together, initially we were just going to do a few gigs and have fun with it, make a little bit of money, but the turnout was so much bigger than we anticipated from the start. We kept it going, so we kept extending it, and then all of a sudden this whole 80s resurgence things came along with all the festivals and stuff, and we started getting onto those things, and it just kept on going, and it's amazing that it's still going. I mean, it never ceases to amaze us, especially, a gig like M3. When we get there, you walk out on that stage and you look out, just endless sea of people,
Right.
And it's a great feeling.
And that's perfect, because that's like, that's like your hometown too. I mean, you guys are right there. So what better band to have on the bill than you guys?
Yeah. Well, and we're experiencing that pretty much everywhere we go. Like we've been doing even the past few weeks, we've been doing like these casino shows, and we've been doing a bunch of shows with Skid Row.
Cool.
And so it's like a co-headline thing, and you never know what to expect when you go into like what did we play last week? I'm trying to remember. All these shows are running into each other.
Right.
Where were we? There's just in the middle of nowhere. We did a show. Well, actually, we did a show with Queensryche too in Ohio, and it was a kind of like this hockey arena size place. And the pre-sales for the tickets, it was maybe half of what the place could hold. So everybody's a little nervous. But you walk out there, by the time we go on stage, the place it wasn't sold out, but it was definitely a good crowd.
Right.
And this is like, Troy, Ohio, like middle of nowhere.
Right.
So, yeah, it's a good feeling that and I don't know how long it's going to last, but we're just riding a wave while we can,
We're hoping everything, is gonna come back around. It seems like the scene's starting to switch back now to people, wanting to, hear music, and album, vinyl sales are going up, and and with the big festival shows, and and having you guys still playing and everything, and it's bringing the younger crowd back into the scene, which is nice.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, there's a lot of younger people, and it's funny because it's like when I was young and I was listening to 50s music, at the end of the 60s or early 70s.
Right.
It's the same kind of thing. And a lot of our fans, they're kids. They get into their parents' record collections and they find Kix records in there.
Right. That's always a good thing.
Yeah.
How about as far as where the band goes from here? I mean, you guys are doing the gigs, the festivals, and still doing it. Is there any plans for another album maybe eventually in the future?
Oh yeah, we've been talking about that because when we did sign with Loud and Proud, they wanted a follow-up record to this record, so. And we've been talking about it. We've been playing so much, we haven't really had time to sit down and work on stuff. But, everybody's working on their own ideas on their own. And at some point we have to throw them all into that pile again and go through that process.
Right.
But we will at some point.
It's probably cool for you now, now to, when you put an album out, you kind of do it at, kind of like at your leisure. I mean, you guys have been together for so long. You just say, well, hey, now's the time, and that's it. And that's you stood the test of time, and I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, we're definitely not in any hurry.
Right. And that's good to have that comfort level, too, when you got to be rushed and pressured into getting something done. And, I think, you're a lot more creative when you don't have that pressure, where you can relax and go in and do it on your terms.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I guess it's good to have. Well, like Donnie was the guy that motivated us. Like he was the guy that pushed it. And now we don't really have that in the band, so of course it's going to take a little longer than it used to, but
right.
but it is a lot more relaxed, and there's not the tension that there used to be. When we get into the studio, it's fun. It's not like this headache.
Right. That's the best way to put it, too.
Yeah.
How about like some of the other things? Any other things you're doing? Any other projects? Any other side things that you want to get out to the fans?
Well, the only other thing I'm really involved in now is Rhino Bucket. We just actually put out a new record about month ago. I guess it was near the end of April it came out.
Right.
And that's a real good record too. But the thing with the Rhino Bucket, it's so hard to find time to tour with them anymore. When I was first playing with them, it was, Kix wasn't even around, so I had all the time in the world. And even the first few years Kix was together, we played like this lumps of shows. Like we'd do a lump of shows in September and then one in December, and the rest of the year was open. So I had all this time with Rhino Bucket. We used to play around, and in fact, I've done several European tours with Rhino Bucket. But especially since the Kix record came out, that those windows have sort of closed. So there's like no time. Like I'll have a week or so here or there where there's no Kix gig, and I'll go, okay, well, maybe we can get some Rhino Bucket shows together. And in fact, the week after next is open, and we had one show booked, and it was in Ohio, and we could not get anything to go with it. There was nothing. I mean, we looked everywhere, and
right.
So we had to cancel that show because it didn't make sense. We weren't going to make enough to even justify the travel expense. So that's
right.
Another thing with Rhino Bucket, because we're not on the same level as Kix. We can't get as much money for a show, so then we can't afford to travel.
Right, exactly.
But we are going back to Europe this winter coming up for 6 weeks. There was a gap in some shows, so I talked to Kix's booking agent, and I said, don't book anything here because I'm going to Europe. So we're actually going over there and doing a run of shows. So that's pretty much the only other thing I've got going on besides Kix.
That's cool that you get to do that, though. Have another side project that or being in another band like Rhino Bucket. I mean, which is another great band. It's and getting to the European audiences are huge over there. I mean, into hard rock and metal. Even more so than over here.
Oh yeah, they are. Especially like Germany. Well, even Spain. But Germany, you can play every night of the week in Germany and have a packed crowd, like anywhere you go.
That's cool.
Like they'll come out and see you. So that's how we do it when we go over there. It's like we'll do like this one tour we went over. I think we did, I forget how many days in a row we did. Some ridiculous amount. I think 23 shows in a row before we had a day off. But you can do it over there. It's pretty cool.
That's amazing that the scene's still kicking over there. I mean, and I'm hoping that eventually it'll get back to where it was back then for the U.S. I mean, we pray about that every day.
Yeah, and that's another problem when especially with Rhino Bucket, trying to book shows. It's like you can only book them weekends, and nobody has rock shows on a weekday, or people won't come out on the weekdays.
Right.
So it's if you're going to be traveling, you got like 2 shows on the weekend, and then what do? You're just sitting around waiting for the next show, just wasting money.
Right.
So, and with Kix, we make enough to where we could just fly in for the weekend and then fly home, and it all works out. But on Rhino Bucket level, we can't really do it that way.
Right, it's tough, and I see that. You got to do things smart, and you don't want to be like you said, play one show or play 2 shows and then sit around for the rest of the time. Doesn't make sense.
Nah, and you're like paying for a hotel room, paying for your meals,
Right, exactly. just wasting money.
Yeah.
And how about
Yeah, I was going to say another thing about the cool thing about Europe, touring Europe too, is they really take care of you over there. The promoters, they it's like you'll show up for sound check, and they'll have like this whole spread of food in the dressing room, and then you get done sound check, and they take you out to like a really nice restaurant for dinner before the show, and that happens everywhere. Like that's like the tradition over there. they take you out to eat, and then you come back and you do the show, and so you're always well fed and well taken care of.
That's great.
Crazy.
That's great. I mean, that's the way to to treat the bands. I mean, that keeps you guys wanting to come back.
Yeah, and the food is really good over there.
That's the bonus, huh?
Yeah.
That's cool. How about any last words? Is there anything else that that you want to get out there, and we'll direct the the fans to check out the things you guys are doing, the stuff you're doing with Rhino Bucket, and the Kicks website, kicksband.com, and Facebook pages and everything. Is there anything that you want to give out there?
Well, just that the Kicks record is still around. If anybody hasn't got it yet, go get it. And it's on Amazon, or you can go to Loud and Proud Records and get it, or you can go to the Kicks website and there's a link. And for Rhino Bucket, the same thing. You can go to Amazon and find it, or the Rhino Bucket label is acetate.com. The Acetate Records. So you just go to acetate.com or whatever, and you can buy the record from there or Amazon, either one.
Okay, that's great, and that's both great too. I mean, it's I don't have the Rhino Bucket yet, but I did hear some things off it, and it's really good. And any of the fans, when your fans are listening, it's like Brian said, kicksband.com. Get out there and check out Rock Your Face Off, because it's a great CD, great album. It's it's if you like the old Kicks, it's the same style. You're gonna love it just as much. And follow Brian. I mean, this guy is a great musician, and I'll tell you what, man. Thanks for the interview. It's a pleasure to speak with you. It really is. It's really an honor. I mean, we've been fans for so long, and to be able to to talk to somebody that we've been listening to for so many years, and it's part of our lives, and that's what I like to tell all the guys that are that we talk to is thank you for making your music a part of our lives. It's very appreciated, man.
Well, the same goes for you guys. I mean, for everybody that all the Kicks fans. I mean, that's why we do this, and that's why we can still do this.
Absolutely, and we're glad, man. You just keep pumping it out there, man. Again, keep playing, because we love it. You got us for life, no doubt.
Well, I don't know how to do anything else, so this is what I do.
That's it. You do it well, man. You do it well. All right, Brian. Now, like I said again, I want to thank you for the interview. We'll get the word out. We put a nice presentation together of the interview, and
okay.
We'll get you the link, and if you want to listen to it, give it the blessing, and then we'll put it out there.
Okay.
But like I said, thanks a lot, man, and I wish you the best. I wish you the best with Kicks, Rhino Bucket, everything that you're doing. Again, it was a pleasure to speak with you, and I wish you success, for the rest of the time, man. Just keep playing, because we're listening.
Okay. Well, yeah. Well, thanks for having me.
Oh, no problem, man. It's a pleasure.
Okay.
All right, thanks, Brian.
All right. Thank you too.
Have a good night, man. We'll see you.